Masechet Kiddushin, Daf Samech Vav. The main topic is how much do we give credibility to one witness? We start with Abaye, who has three statements about this topic. Amar Abaye, Amar lo ayed echad achalta cheleb v'hala shotek ne'eman. One witness comes and says, you ate forbidden fat. Right, the guy ate something, let's say by mistake, and he didn't realize. But this witness says, "Oh, you ate that piece of meat that was in the fridge. That was chaleb." The guy that actually ate it was quiet, so we believe the witness. The guy didn't say no, it's not. He didn't say yes, it is either. So we believe one witness. Vetana tuna, and in fact we have a Mishnah that teaches the Baraita it is a Mishnah in Masechet Keretot that teaches the same thing. Amar lo aydechad achalta chelev v'hala omed lo achalti patur tamad. Amar lo ha'ishtik meheman. If someone, a witness says you ate cheleb, and the person says no, I did not, patur, he does not have to bring a korban hatat. The punishment for eating cheleb beshogeg is a korban hatat. He denies this. He says, I know what it is. I bought it. I took this meat, so I know it's not cheleb. He doesn't have to bring it. So we can infer from the Mishnah that the only reason he doesn't have to bring a korban is because he said, no, I didn't eat it. If he was quiet, then the one witness would be believed. Regarding a korban, you can't just bring korban chotat because you feel like it, or from safek, I'm not sure what it is. If you're not sure what it is, you said 50% chance, I think this might be kosher, or it might be hayadeb, then you have to bring an asham talui, different korban. You only can bring you have to bring, and you only can bring a korban hatat if there is evidence, or you know yourself, or some evidence that you did in fact sin. So the one witness here is believed to require and allow this person to bring a korban hatat. If not, if someone brings a korban hatat when he doesn't have to, then it's not actually korban, and he is slaughtering cholin, an unconsecrated animal, in the azara, which is a very serious sin. Okay, so this is proof. This is statement number one, where we believe one witness regarding a prohibition like eating cheleb. Second law is, we're going to see why we need all three of these laws. A witness comes and says, listen, this food that you have that you think is tahor is actually tameh. This could make a big difference. If it's for terumah or kodashim and it's tameh, then it can't be eaten. Or if it's just other food, a kohen or anyone who wants to eat it b'tahara now can no longer eat it while he's tahor. If he eats it, it'll become tameh, or he'll have to wait till he becomes tameh otherwise in order to eat it. So this degrades the value of it. It could be it could cause a prohibition, in fact, if it's terumah and he eats it anyway. Now, the one witness says, right, I saw some dead mouse touch it and it's tameh, and the owner of it is quiet. We believe the one witness. Vetana tuna, and here also we have a Mishnah that proves this. If one witness says this stuff became tameh, and the owner says no, it did not become tameh, patur is exempt from punishment. Let's say it was terumah and he ate the terumah. Ta'amad amar lo ha'ishtik meheman. The only reason why the witness is not believed is because he was contradicted by the owner. But if the owner was quiet, then the one witness would be believed. That's the second case. Someone comes and says, this ox that you own over here, it was involved in a sin of bestiality, and therefore cannot be used as an offering. And the owner is quiet. Now, he doesn't agree. He doesn't deny. That one witness is deemed credible, and you can't use that animal as a korban. Vetana tuna, and here also we have a Mishnah that backs us up. B'shemit al pi adechad or al pi ha'be'alim ne'eman. Al pi adechad hechedameh ideka modu be'alim hainu al pi ha'be'alim elalav deshatik. The Mishnah says, if you have an animal that a sin was done with it, bestiality, or that it killed someone, and the animal, and there was one witness that saw this happen, or if the owner himself testifies that this happened, then the one witness or the owner is deemed credible. Now, when it says one witness, what did the owner do? If the owner agreed, well, then that's the same as al pi ba'alim. If the owner said, yes, in fact, right, I saw that this did this thing, then it's the same law twice. Why would the Mishnah say the same thing twice? Rather, it must be that the owner was, when it says edehad, that's the case where the owner was quiet. That's case one. Or if the owner admits and says, yes, it was true. So you see here that when one witness says something and the owner is quiet, that the one witness is believed. So there you go, three statements by Abaye that says that in all these three cases, one witness is trusted. Usericha, I need all three. If I only had the first one, if not, that the person himself, the owner, was convinced that in fact it was Haleb, that he would not he would not bring a korban hatat. So in that case, it's clear that by his silence and bringing a korban hatat, it's clear that he is admitting that it's kind of like almost like an admission, because it would be a sin on his part to bring if he's not guilty, to bring an animal that would be chulin, because if he doesn't have to bring a korban hatat, then it's chulin. So to bring an animal to the azara would be a sin, and so therefore by not being quiet and bringing the animal, that's a kind of admission. So in that case, it's easy to argue that we believe the one witness, because the owner himself is even doing something that otherwise he would get in trouble for. However, in the second case where the witness says, oh, this food that you think is tahor is actually tameh, maybe he's quiet only not because he's admitting that it's really tameh. He's just thinking, you know what, I'll eat it when I'm tameh anyway. Eventually, he's tahor now. Maybe he's being careful to be tahor for some reason. He's going to bring korban. He says, listen, next week I'm going to become tameh because I have to go to a cemetery, or whatever reason, and so he's going to become tameh anyway. He says, you know what, I'll just leave it and I'll eat it when I'm tameh. So, and I'm not losing anything. So he doesn't bother to contradict the witness, but he doesn't mean that he agrees to the witness. So Abaye has to teach, don't think that even here, where you might think that his being quiet is not admission, he says no. Even here, it is in fact like an admission, and we believe the one witness in this case as well. And if you only told me this second case but not the third, I would say the reason why we believe the one witness in this case is because the guy's quiet, and his being quiet does mean something because he's losing out when he's tahor. When the witness comes and says this food is tameh, that means when the guy is tahor, he's not able to eat it. Now he's going to have to go find other food. So his being quiet suggests that the witness is correct. But regarding when the witness says this ox that you had sinned and therefore you cannot use it as a sacrifice, the guy might say to himself, well, I wasn't going to sacrifice all of my oxen, right? So I won't sacrifice it, even though in his mind he disagrees with the witness. He's not admitting to it, but he's not going to bother to come and say, no, you're wrong, bring proof, you bring proof, where were you on that day, where was your ox on that day? He's not going to bother because he's not planning on making it a sacrifice anyway. And therefore, in that case, you might have thought that his silence would not help substantiate the one witness. And so Abaye's chidush is, even in that case where his silence does not substantiate the one witness very much at all, because he might just be quiet because he doesn't care. Even in that case, we do believe the one witness with the consequences that will follow. So that's why I need each case is giving a greater chidush. Whereas the first one, his silence is very meaningful, because most people wouldn't be silent in such a case, because then they're going to have to bring a korban, and they would sin if this wasn't true. So there, his silence takes up a lot of the weight of the evidence, and so there it's easy to say, well, I believe one witness. But even if his silence does not mean much, because he's just probably silent because he doesn't want to bother, even then, one witness is reliable. Okay, so Abaye thinks very strongly that one witness is reliable, and we're going to see this come up in the following discussions as well. So now we have a question. What if one witness comes and says this guy's wife was committed adultery? One witness says that, and the husband is quiet. Now, what do we say? Do we believe the one witness and he has to divorce his wife and other consequences that will follow? Mahu amar Abaye ne'eman, Rava amar eno ne'eman. Have davar shebe'erva ve'en davar shebe'erva pachot mishenayim. Abaye, consistent with was his approach above. If one witness says something and the guy, the litigant, is quiet, we believe the one witness. Rava says no. This is a matter about forbidden relations, and we have a general rule. Whenever it comes to forbidden relations, you need at least two witnesses to establish a fact. Amar Abaye, mina amina la. Abaye says, what is my proof that one witness is believed? De'ahu samya dehava mesader matniyata kameh demor Shemuel. Yom echad nega le ve'la hava ka'ateh. We're going to see a few stories coming up that will prove one side or another. And so this is a story about a blind man. He used to review Mishnayot in front of Shemuel. And one day he came late. He was not around. So Shemuel sent a messenger, go to his house, see what happened to him. The messenger went down one way, and meanwhile the blind man came a different way, and so they missed each other on the way. Then the shaliach eventually, since he didn't see him on the way, went all the way to his house. When he got to his house, he saw something that she didn't want him to see, apparently. And he came back to the Bet Midrash, and he said, "I'm sorry to report, but this blind man's wife committed adultery. Right? I saw her with someone." When I went there. So the blind man went to Moshe Shemuel and said, "What do I do? We have one witness. Do we believe him, and I have to divorce my wife or not?" And Moshe Shemuel answered, "If you believe him, if he's trusted by you, then you have to divorce her. But if you don't trust him, then you don't have to." Now, here's Abaye's clincher to the proof. My lav imeheman alach de lav gazlanahu. When Moshe Shemuel said to the blind man, if he's believed, if he's trusted by you, does that not mean that if he's trusted by you, that he's not a thief? Right? If you think that this witness is a reliable person in general, if he's a thief or gambler or whatever, then he would be not a valid witness. But if you believe that he's a valid witness, then you have to trust him and you have to divorce. Meaning that one witness, and here the owner, the litigant, is quiet. He doesn't know one way or another. He's like, okay, if you say so. So Abaye says, listen, the only way you can stay with your wife is if you think that this guy is not trustworthy because he's an invalid witness. But as long as he's a valid witness, he's not a thief, then he is believed and you have to divorce your wife. This supports Abaye that says one witness is trusted when the owner says nothing. Now, that's a challenge to Rava, because Rava says we don't trust one witness. You need two witnesses for davar shebe'erva. Ve'Rava imehem malach kebetere zil apeka ve'ila la tapeka. Rava says no, that's not what Moshe Shemuel meant. If he's trusted to you, as a valid witness, what he actually means is, if this one witness is trusted by you like two, then you have to divorce her. So you need two witnesses, but the husband himself, if he is convinced that his wife has committed adultery, then you don't need two witnesses. He saw it himself, or he knows himself, or he trusts this person like two witnesses. That means the husband is convinced, so then he has to divorce her. If you're not convinced, then don't divorce her. So the key is they're not convinced. Just because one witness came and said, he could be the most righteous man in the city. If you don't think he's right, then you don't have to divorce her, meaning one witness is not credible. So Rava says, actually, if you understand this statement correctly, you'll see that this story fits very well, maybe even better, with my opinion. All right, so that's one proof that Abaye tries to bring, and Rava answers. V'amar Abaye, mina amina la detanya. So Abaye says, okay, you know what? I have another proof that I can bring from the following long story, famous story. Maaseh Yannai hamelech shalach lecho chalisha ben bar v'chibesh sham shishim kerachim. King Yannai, this is Alexander Yannai, one of the leaders of the Hashmonaim. He was a king, but he's mentioned, called king here, and he also he considered himself Kohen Gadol. In fact, the Hashmonai leaders, they first made themselves Kohanim Gedolim, and later on they took upon themselves, in their dynasty, they took upon themselves the title of king as well, which is very problematic. Number one, to be a Kohen Gadol, you have to be from the proper lineage, the lineage of Sadok. Sadok was the Kohen Gadol in time of Shlomo. It went straight through the whole first Bet HaMikdash, and now in second Bet HaMikdash, until the Hashmonaim, they took their own dynasty, which was not from the line of Sadok, and made themselves Kohanim Gedolim. So that's problematic, problem number one. Problem number two is when they made themselves kings. Kings are supposed to be from the line of Yehudah. Supposed to be a separation of powers between kings and Kohanim, and yet the Hashmonai leaders took upon themselves both. We're going to see here that the Chachamim criticized them for it, and this is one of the main stories that we see, that criticism. So this Alexander Yannai, who was, we're going to see, not a very favorable character. He went and successfully conquered 60 cities. And he was so happy that he won. So he invited all the sages of Israel, and he said, our forefathers ate salty food when they were building the Bet HaMikdash. Salty food might refer here to purslane. This is referring to most likely the building of the second Bet HaMikdash. This would be around the year 100 BCE. Bet HaMikdash was built in 516 BCE, but they still had a memory of, after even 400 years, that when they built the second Bet HaMikdash, they did it out of poverty. They barely had enough economic and political support. It was very difficult for them to build the second Bet HaMikdash. In fact, the Bet HaMikdash at the beginning of the second Bet HaMikdash was a very unimpressive building, so unimpressive that there was a disappointment to the elders who remembered the glory of the first Bet HaMikdash and saw the second one, and they were crying, not being joyous like the young people were. Okay, so he says, listen, our forefathers, when they built the Bet HaMikdash, they were eating this salty food, and so we, as now that we are rich because we had all these victories, we are going to eat the same foods that they did, but we're going to eat it on tables of gold, right? So we want to commemorate their strength and their perseverance that they got us to this place, and now we're even more successful. We're going to eat the similar foods that they did, kind of like eating masa, poor man's food, even to remember the slavery, even though now we're free, so we eat it in a celebratory way. Okay, so far so good. There was one guy, no good, scoundrel, scoffer, had an evil heart, didn't care about anything, irresponsible. His name was Elazar ben Po'ira. He just a troublemaker. Yannai starts talking to Elazar, talks to the king, and he says, you know, the Pharisees, the hearts of the Pharisees are against you. You're sitting here within a party, and they seem like they're celebrating with you, and they're happy for you, but behind closed doors, they say negative things about you. They don't respect you. So he says, how can I, what should I do? The Yannai asks, Hakim lahem basi sheben anecha. Hakim lahem basi sheben anecha. Says, have them stand up and give you respect by going and wearing the seats that the Kohen Gadol wears, right? And see how they act when you put on the seats, and they'll have to stand up and give you kavod. So he did that. He put the seats on, and Hayasham Zaken Echad Yehuda ben Gididya Shemo. Vayomer Yehuda ben Gididya leYannai HaMelech. Yannai HaMelech Rav lecha keter malchut hanach keter kehuna lezar'o shel Aharon. There was one person there, a Pharisee meaning one of the rabbi sages. In that time there weren't officially a group called rabbis yet, but the Pharisees are the intellectual predecessors of the rabbis. So we're conflating rabbis and Pharisees here. So you have this Pharisee Yehuda ben Gididia, who said to Yannai HaMelech, says Yannai, King Yannai, enough that you have the crown of king of monarchy. Okay, you're calling yourself king. All right, well, we'll tolerate that. But leave the Keter Kehuna to the descendants of Aharon. שהיו אומרים, אמו נשבית במודיעים, ויבוקש לבב ולא נמצא, ויבדרו חכמי ישראל בזעם. He said, this Yehuda ben Gididia, right, enough that you be king, but don't be Kohen. If to be a Kohen, you have to be from the lineage of Aharon. Now, the Chashmonaim were Kohanim. They were from the lineage of Aharon. But this guy, he made a claim. There was a rumor that Yannai's mother was taken captive in Modi'in, and if someone is taken captive, then she is prohibited to marry a Kohen, which would make the child a halal. Even if his father was a Kohen, it makes the child a halal. So therefore, he's invalid to serve as a Kohen, certainly not Kohen Gadol. This is besides the problem that he's not from the line of the Kohen Gadol. In addition, he's a halal. This is the claim of Yehuda ben Gididia. So you see that the evil plan of Elazar ben Po'ira worked. By having him put on the seats. This was, already before. There must have been this rumor spreading around that this guy, he's not improper lineage. And then by having him put on the seats, this prompted Yehuda ben Gididia to say, enough is enough, right? Enough we have to tolerate that you have one crown, you can't take the other crown either. Now, after that, he said that, they did an investigation. This is what's going to be key for our proof. They investigated and they said it was not true. His mother was not taken into captive, and this was a false accusation. And so the sages were expelled in rage. Right? The king said, "How dare you all claim, say this and say a negative thing about me, and it wasn't even true." And so the king is very angry at the sages. Now, back to the troublemaker. Vayomer Elazar ben Po'ira Yannai HaMelech, Yannai HaMelech, Hedot shebYisrael kach hu dino, v'ata melech v'kohen gadol, kach dincha. So Elazar ben Po'ira said to the king, so the judgment of a common person, if someone says slander about you, and you say, okay, get out, I'm angry at you, right? That would be for a proper reaction for a common person who gets false slander. But you are a king and Kohen Gadol. That's all you're going to do to the Pharisees, to the rabbis. That's going to be your only punishment. You got to instill fear in them. Umaya says, so King Yannai said, what should I do? And Elazar ben Po'ira says, Ata shomei la'asati romsem. If you listen to my advice, crush them. Don't let them get away with making up these false rumors about you. And now King Alexander Yannai says, what about the Torah? If I kill all the sages, then who will learn Torah? Portraying him kind of like a Sadiq, that he cares so much about the Torah. Alexander says, don't worry about the Torah. It's there, wrapped in the corner, right? There's a Torah scroll. Anyone who wants to come and study can study. You think the sages are so great? What, they know how to read. So someone else will come and learn how to read, knows how to read, and he'll study, and then he'll be the next sage. Don't worry about the Torah. Torah is fine on its own. Now, commenting on this story later, Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak says, you see that Alexander Yannai here became a heretic, became like a Sadducee. Which in fact he did. He was allied with the Sadducees his whole life. This entire story has a parallel in Josephus, and the basic storyline is the same. Some of the details are a little different. And in fact, there also it says that Alexander Yannai sided with the Sadducees. So, according to the Sadducees, they only believe in the written law, not the oral law. And so, according to the Sadducees, all right, it's written there, so someone else can come and read it. But what he should have said, if he was a true believer, meaning a Pharisee, then he would have said, okay, fine, that's Rashi Bichtav, yeah, anyone can go read it. But the oral law, if you kill all the sages, then there'll be no more oral law. And he should have worried about that. So you see that he was, not only was he, all these other problems, he was also a Sadducean heretic. Now, miyad vatusas hara'a al yedei Elazar ben Po'ira v'harigu Kol Chachmei Yisrael. And immediately, back to the story, evil arose, caught fire through Elazar ben Poira and spread, and the sages of Israel were all killed. Vayala mishtomem ad sheba Shimon ben Shatach vechazir et haTorah liyoshna. And the world was empty from Torah until Shimon ben Shatach, a great hero, was able to come, and he happened to be the brother of Alexander Yannai's wife. And he, through his brilliance and righteousness, was able to restore the Torah to its former glory. One thing Shimon is known for is, he's mentioned Pirkei Avot, he's also known for instituting universal education for Jewish children. Okay, so that's the end of the story. And Josephus says that Alexander Yannai, at the end of his life, told his wife that she should, Shalom Siona Malka, says, listen, I followed the Sadducees, I had a hard time, you should follow the Pharisees if you want to be successful, and that's what she did. Okay, now we only bring the story not because, it's an important story for history, but the Talmud is not primarily interested in just telling us historical stories, but rather brings it here as a proof for one witness. So we ask, how did they, in that investigation, there was a rumor that Alexander Yannai's mother was taken captive, and then it was proven that it was not true. How did they prove that it was not true? And what was the original proof? If the original proof was two witnesses said, we saw his mother was captive, and therefore Yannai is a halal. And then two other witnesses come and say, no, she was not taken captive. So then it's 2 against 2. Why do you rely on the ones that say that she was not taken captive instead of the ones that says she was taken captive? So then there would not be a definitive clarification of the matter. And in the story it says they investigated and they said it's definitely not true. So it can't be that there was 2 witnesses. Rather must be that there was only one witness that saw her being taken captive. So one witness said, we saw that she was taken captive. Then when they did the investigation, they found 2 witnesses that says she was not taken captive. And that's the reason why we overturned the one witness. What can we prove from here? If not for the 2 witnesses that supported Yannai, we did believe the one witness. Abaye says you prove from this long story that one witness that says someone is committed adultery, taken captive, is we suspect that that person, even against their will, committed adultery, and therefore would be a halal. So you see, one witness is in fact believed, and that supports Abaye. So what's Rava going to say to this? Rava le'olam tereu tereh. V'chodamar Rav Acha bar Rav min Yomi be'ayedeh hazama. Hachanameh be'ayedeh hazama. Now Rava says, I can explain it according, if it was one witness, then one witness would not be believed. That's what Rava says, one was not believed. And here, what was the case? It was in fact 2 witnesses and 2 witnesses. And it's as Rav Acha bar Yomi said in different contexts that we're talking about Edeh Hazama. The first 2 witnesses came and said, listen, we saw that she was taken captive in such a place on that day. The second set of witnesses come and say, you could not have seen that because you were with us on that day in a different place altogether. So the second set of witnesses invalidate the first set of witnesses, and they're thrown out altogether. This is not a contradictory witnesses, but rather dehazama, conspiring witnesses that do in fact negate it entirely. And so, yes, it could be 2 and 2. Or an alternative answer is, as what Rabbi Yitzchak says, who said that they replaced the Yannai's mother with the maidservant. In other words, these enemies came and they said, okay, we're taking your mother captive. But then the people around there were able to give them a maidservant, and I guess the captives didn't know the difference because they didn't know who Yannai's mother was. And so Yannai's mother was kept safe at home. And they took this other woman, and so since that's true, even though there were 2 witnesses that the captives took somebody, they were able to investigate and reveal that the person they took was not Yannai's mother, and that's how they cleared the rumor. Okay, so that's how Rava could answer that proof. All right, Amar Rava, mina amina la. Now it's Rava's turn to say, what's the proof from my side that one witness is not believed? Ditnan, Amar Rabbi Shimon, Maaseh b'mgura shel diskim b'Yavne, שהייתה עומדת בחזקת שלמה, ומדדו ונמצאת חסרה. A baraita, even though it says Ditnan, is actually a baraita, a long baraita, that's going to be the source of his proof. There was an incident about a reservoir of diskim in Yavne, a certain reservoir, a pool of water, and everybody assumed that it had enough water in it, 40 se'ah, to be a kosher mikveh. And people were using it. But then one day they actually measured it and found that it did not have 40 se'ah, it was smaller. And therefore, all the things that they used it for, all the people and items that they dipped in it, that now people thought were tahor, actually were tameh. So what do we do? Kol taharot shenasu al gabah haya Rabbi Tarfon metahev, Rabbi Akiva metameh. So all the things that were dipped into it in the past, people, so Rabbi Tarfon said they're good. We can assume it was good. There was a hazakah. Someone measured it some time ago, whenever the last time they measured it was. So there was a presumption that it was kosher mikveh, and therefore everything until that point that they used it for is tahor, and only from now on it's tameh. This is like a Sefer Torah, for example, that someone writes and checks and is good, has a chazakah that is good. So therefore, everything that you read in it is good until someone finds a mistake. Now, when you find a mistake, you don't say, well, we have to go back and read every parasha that we used from in this Torah. No, you just stop there at that pasuk. You bring a new one and continue from there. Even though it's obvious that the Pisukim that you read just earlier were from an unkosher Sefer Torah, nevertheless use a chazakah. It was presumed kosher, so it keeps that presumption until the point at which it's found out that it's not kosher. That's Rabbi Tarfon. Rabbi Akiva, however, says no, tameh. All the things that you did, that you used even before, retroactively now we know are tameh. Amar Rabbi Tarfon, mikveh zeh bechazkat shalem hu omed, misafek ata ba lechasero, al techasserenu misafek. Now we have a long argument between the two. Rabbi Tarfon says this mikveh had a chazakah presumption that it was full and has 40 se'ah. So you're coming from out of safek. You don't know beforehand if it had or didn't have. So you're coming to say that all the things that were dipped in it beforehand are not kosher, but that's a safek, and you should not assume that it's deficient when you're not sure about it. We should follow a chazakah until a time that you're sure, then that breaks the chazakah. Amar Rabbi Akiva, Adam ze b'chazkat tameh hu omed, misafek ata ba letaharo, al tetarenu misafek. Rabbi Akiva uses the same logic, but instead of focusing on the mikveh, focusing on the person that went and dunked in it. This person, he was for sure tameh, right? We saw he went to and touched a tameh item. So he had a chazakah being tameh. Now he went into the mikveh, and you're not sure if this mikveh was good or not. So out of a safek, you're assuming that you're going to take his chazakah of tum'ah and make it tahor. No, something based on your principle that you just said, that something that is in doubt cannot undo a chazakah. I agree. I say the same thing. This guy had a chazakah being tameh, and so a safek mikveh cannot change his chazakah, and that's why I say he is tameh. Amar Rabbi Tarfon, Mashala omed makriv al gabe hamizbech v'nodashu ben girusha ben halusa she'abodato keshara. Rabbi Tarfon, okay, I have an analogy that I can use to say it's good. So they have a kohen who thought he was a kosher kohen. And he's in the middle of doing a service. He's there sacrificing an animal on the altar, and then someone comes in and says, "Oh, I just found out. In fact, your mother had been divorced, or your mother had been a halusa before she married your father, and therefore you're a halal." What do we say about that guy? Only from now on he can't serve, but anything he did so far is good. That's a law. We're going to see the source of that law in a few minutes. So therefore it should be the same thing here. We should follow the presumption that all the people that went to the mikveh are tahor until now. So we continue the presumption of purity, just like we assume the presumption of the kosher we assume the kosherness of the mikveh, just like we assume the prior presumption of kosherness of this kohen. Amar Rabbi Akiva, Mashallah, Rabbi Akiva says, okay, I also have an analogy. If someone, a Kohen, who thinks that he's a good Kohen, is in the middle of doing service and then finds out he actually has a blemish. Someone sees him, I don't know, on his leg or something, wherever it is. He says, oh, look, there's a blemish here, which he didn't realize before. So his earlier service is disqualified. So you don't have the same special law that you have for Ben Chalusa. We're going to see this discussed more in a minute, the distinction between them. So I can compare it also to a Kohen, where when we find out he was no good, then retroactively what he did before also is not good. Amar Rabbi Tafon, atad dimito leba'amum, v'ani dimiti leben gerusha ben chalusa. Rabbi Tafon says, okay, so we both have analogies. I think it's more similar to ben gerusha ben chalusa. You think it's more similar to ba'amum. Nireh lemi domeh. Let's see which one is the better analogy. I domeh leben gerusha ben chalusa. Nidu ben gerusha or ben chalusa. I domeh leba'amum. Nidu nenu keba'amum. Let's look at other aspects of these laws and see, and if we find that a person who went to mikveh, and we find out now that mikveh is no good, if it's more similar to the case of ben gerusha ben chalusa, which is my case, then we should say that he's kosher, until which time we know for sure he's not kosher, and that will prove my point. And if you can show me that this case is more similar to someone who has a blemish, in which case we retroactively realize that everything he did was not good, then I'll agree to you. So let's see. Can we find what aspects can you find? Right? You prove to me that it's more similar to a ba'amum. Hitchili be'aki baladun. Mikveh pisulo b'yachid, u'ba'amum pisulo b'yachid. Va'yuchi ben gerusha ben chalusa pisulo b'shnaim. Rabbi Akiva says, mikveh, even if one witness says it's no good, it's already no good. And the ba'amum also is determined by an individual. If you want to know if something is a mum or not, you go to one expert, and he says, oh, yes, this is a mum, and he's no good. So in both of these cases, one witness is sufficient. That's why it's more similar to ba'amum. And so you don't bring me the case of ben gerusha ben chalusa in order to prove that someone is no good, that their mother was a gerusha, and then he's a halal. You have to bring two witnesses. Rabbi Akiva next brings another similarity between the two cases that he thinks are analogous. Davar acher, mikveh pisulo begufo, ba'amum pisulo begufo. V'al yochech ben gerusha ben chalusa, shepisulo me'acherim. Mikveh, its deficiency is in its own body. It's a body of water, and it's deficient. And ba'amum, a kohen who has a blemish, also, his body is in that way deficient. And so those are similar to each other. And that's why Rabbi Akiva is going to prove from one that just like a ba'amum is from retroactively was no good, so too also the mikveh retroactively, when we find that now it's no good, everything before also that was dipped in it is no good. And don't bring me a proof from ben gerusha ben chalusa where the problem is external, that his disqualification is from because of his parents, not because of his body himself. His body is fine. It's something from that was caused by an outside reason, and therefore that's less similar to those two. Rabbi Akiva says, Akiva, anyone who separates from you separates from life itself, right? Because look how I challenged you, and you gave me such great proofs. I made one analogy. I thought I was so brilliant. I made an analogy to the ben chalusa, that it's no good only from now on, and you brought a different analogy, ba'amum, that's now no good retroactively, and I said, well, how do you know it's more similar to that? You brought me two proofs why the case of a mikveh is more similar to ba'amum, and I didn't think of any of that. I agree. I changed my mind, and right, you were really a source of life of Torah. That's the end of the Braita. Now, all this was brought as a proof for Rava, who says that one witness, when the litigant is quiet, is believed. Where do we see that in this case? It doesn't say anything about whether he says, whether he denies it. Did the Kohen deny it? Was he quiet? Rava says, I can prove. In the case of ba'amum, where one witness is believed to say, yes, he has a blemish. What is the case? If the Kohen denied it, then would we believe one witness? The Kohen says, I'm totally fine. So we would not believe the one witness if he's denying it. Rather, it must be that the Kohen was quiet. And, okay, so that's that case. Now, in order to make an analogy, the cases have to be equivalent. This is one that we really want to know, because we want to know about case laws regarding the davar shebe'erva, the shatik, v'katan mikveh pesulo b'yachid, ba'amum pesulo b'yachid, v'aluchich ben gerusha ben chalusa shepesulo b'shnayim. So therefore, the case of ben gerusha ben chalusa also has to mean that the Kohen was quiet. And Rabbi Akiva said that mikveh is disqualified with one. Ba'amum only also with one person. That says it's no good. And ben gerusha ben chalusa, you need two people. So here we see that you need two people to say that the Kohen is a halal in the case where the Kohen is quiet. We can derive from that if there was only one witness that said he is a halal and he was quiet, he would not be believed. That's the opinion of Rava. One witness and the litigant is quiet, the witness is not believed, right? And you see that here because it says you need two witnesses even though he is quiet. So that's Rava's proof. Abaye said that one witness when the litigant is quiet is believed. So how can you explain this? Amar le'olam de kamachish le. I can explain all the cases that in fact the Kohen denies. He says, I'm good, I'm a kosher Kohen. And you asked, why is the Kohen believed? Why is the witness believed if the Kohen himself denies it? Because we can tell the Kohen, okay, where's the blemish? It's on the back of your leg. Okay, pick up your pants and let's see. Well, we could see it for ourselves. And in fact, this is exactly what Rabbi Akiva means when he's comparing these two things that are a problem in their body. What's the difference if there's a problem in the body or with the parents or something else, internal, external? What's the difference? The difference is very significant. If there's a problem in the body itself, then we're going to believe one witness because this is something that we can easily verify ourselves. If someone says this mikveh he measured it, mikveh does not have 40 se'ah, we're going to believe him because we could measure it ourselves. And same thing with the Kohen, we're going to believe one witness, even if the guy's jumping up and down and says, no, I don't have a blemish. Okay, you don't have a blemish? Show us. So since we can verify it, we believe one witness, and so that's why in that case we believe him. We believe the one witness, even though he is denying it. But that's not true for ben gerusha ben halusa, where we cannot prove it, we can't verify it. This based on some documents. Where's the get? What happened? Some another place and another time. It's not easily verifiable, and that's why we require two witnesses in order to prove that he is ben gerusha ben halusa. Because we're talking about a case where the Kohen is denying it. The Kohen's denial in front of two witnesses, we forget about the denial, we believe the two witnesses. But if it was only one witness would not be believed in this case because the Kohen is denying it. But this is no problem for Abaye. Abaye agrees. If the Kohen, one witness with the Kohen denying it, we don't believe the one witness. But if the Kohen was quiet, then one witness would be believed. So Abaye is able to explain this baraita just fine, according to his own opinion. And that's an important distinction between something that you can verify and cannot verify. All right, that ends that section. Now we're just going to go back and bring proofs for a couple of the laws that were mentioned here. We mentioned that if someone is doing service and he thought he was okay, and then he realizes he's a halal, only from everything he did before is good, valid. Only from now on is not good. How do you know? What's the source? We're going to have three sources. It's told, this is a blessing to Pinehas, that you will have the Brit Kehunat Olam for you and your descendants after you. Why do you have to add those words? To teach me whether your descendants are kosher, or even if they're not kosher. Now, if he knows for sure, if for sure you're not kosher, definitely halal, then you can't serve. So this is coming to include someone who thought he was kosher, but then realizes he's not after. It's okay. Everything you did until that point is kosher. That's proof one. This is a blessing to Levi. It says Hashem should bless his substance and he should be successful. But we're making a play on words. lo like holin, that even if you're halal but you thought you were okay, but in fact now you realize you're really a halal, nevertheless the things that you did, the service that you did already, tiseh, will be acceptable. That everything that you did until now. From now on, you can't serve, but whatever you did till now is okay, even though it was holin, you were halal. Third proof to be Yannai amar mehacha ubata el hakohen asher bayimim ahem. Regarding bikurim, you have to bring the bikurim to the kohen, and the pasuk says that will be in your days. V'chi ta'aleh da'atcha shadam olech esel kohen shelo haya b'yamav. Why do you need those extra words? Are you going to go to a kohen that lives in a different century? Are you going to go in a time machine and bring it to that kohen? Just say, come to the kohen. Of course, the kohen that is in your day. Rather means a kohen that was valid on that day. As long as he thought he was valid on that day, and even though he became a halal afterwards, nevertheless, all the service that he did until that point is fine. You can go to him. It's okay. And that's the third proof for the Ben Girusha Ben Halusa. Everything he does until then is valid. And this is not true for Baal Mum. How do you know that if someone realizes that he's a blemish, then everything he did retroactively until then is no good? Amar Rav Yehuda, Amar Shemuel, Amar Kera. Lachen noten lo et biriti shalom, kishu shalem velo kishu haser. We bring it from a pasuk back to Pinchas that says, I'm going to give him a covenant of peace. Now, the word shalom, we can read without the vav as being shalem, meaning that he's only a valid kohen if he is perfect, unblemished. But if he's missing, he has a blemish, then he does not have a berit of kehuna. He cannot serve at all, even retroactively. What he did before is no good. We ask about this derasha v'hashalom ketiv. Hold on, in the Torah it's written maleh with a vav, so you can't read it shalem. Amar Rav Nachman vav de shalom keti ahi. So Rav Nachman says no, it's okay because that vav is broken. It's written in the Torah like this. It's written in two halves. To teach me that I can read it with the vav, shalom, that's the peshat, or I can read it without the vav to say shalem. Only if he is unblemished, then his service is good. But if he's blemished, then his service is not good, even retroactively. Baruch Adonai leolam, amen ve'amen.